Welcome to Murder and Everything Else. My name is Joy.
And my name is Cheryl, and Joy and I are two very old friends who are going to talk about murder and everything else. So, Joy, I had a dream last night that I was married to someone that had a staff of maids and cooks, gardeners.
It wasn't Jason Momoa, was it? Because I'm already married to him.
No, but this person had red hair.
Was it Conan O'Brien?
No, I can only assume it was one of the members of the royal family, which is hilarious because I have no interest in them. So I do not know why I would dream this. Probably through osmosis through you because you love the royal family. But he did oddly look a lot like Harry. Anyway,
he's a little bit of a ginger dish.
He is. And you know what? I feel when they were younger, I thought that William was the hottie, but then it kind of flipped when they got older. Do you agree?
Well, I have to say I'm married to a ginger, and he's not a ginger anymore, but he was a ginger when I met him. So I'm partial to ginger. So I'm going to always be Team Harry.
Oh, interesting. Well, anyway, so I'm married to this person that has like loads of money, and we're living in this mansion, and there's lace all over the place. I don't know why there's lace. On the windows, on the bed,
Maybe you were a lace maker. Maybe you were married to a lace maker.
And that's how I met him. Anyway, my pressing question while being married, or we're just newly married, so I'm learning all the ins and outs, right? And this was my pressing question, being married to someone that was rich enough to have a mansion and staff. This was my question. I said to him, so if you feel like having a snack, can you just go into the kitchen and take it out from the refrigerator yourself?
So it was kind of like a White House situation. It was like you were married and living in the White House.
But I had to laugh at myself because I'm like, other people would maybe be asking, like, what kind of events should I expect to go to? You know, should I take a
Where's my ball gown?
And I ask, can you go to the refrigerator by yourself? Or do you have to ask like someone to get it for you? And his response, which is also very telling about my life and my personality and probably my hang-ups and whatever. His response is, well, our parents always liked us to stay pretty healthy. So the kitchen staff makes sure we aren't eating too much sugar.
God. I feel like I'm in a public service announcement for like after school special or something.
Anybody wants to decode or like just, decipher what that dream meant, please write into murder and everything else at gmail.com because I thought it was hilarious. And why I would dream that.
Also, if you have a staff to bring you snacks and there's no hot Cheetos involved, I'm out. I'm not coming. I need the Diet Cokes and the hot Cheetos, okay? In that order.
Right. I have no idea why I would dream something like that, but it was freaking hilarious.
Interesting. What you need to do is when you go to bed tonight, you need to finish the dream and find out who it is so that we can find out who this like elusive ginger is.
Mystery person, yeah. But anyway, that was the first sign of trouble in our marriage, was that I could not go to the kitchen by myself.
That's right. Oh my God, that's so funny. Well, Cheryl, you know what is just around the corner?
What's that?
The Olympics.
I was just asking someone at work yesterday, when is the next Olympics? Because I don't follow anything anymore.
Oh, the Olympics are like it's so exciting. It's from July 26th to August 11th. And I have to
Mm,
tell you that we yesterday we sat and watched a bunch of the qualifying, stuff, the track and field stuff that's happening at University of Oregon, and we watched a bunch of the swimming stuff that was happening somewhere else, and I think Indiana, and we watched a bunch of other stuff. So that was very, very exciting. Just, because they're putting the teams together. They just have heat after heat after heat to see who gets eliminated and who gets to be on Team USA. So that was super exciting.
so is that what you guys watch? Because all I'll watch probably is diving, gymnastics, maybe track and field.
Yeah, we like to watch whatever is the event that's on.
Okay.
And we even watch shot put, which I got to tell you, I I don't understand a sport where you tuck a giant ball into your neck crack and then spin around in a circle and let it fly. And I was kind of like clowning those guys, like, what kind of sport is this?
Well,
And
it's
then,
definitely from ancient times.
yeah, that's what Gabe
Definitely.
said. He goes, it's an ancient Roman
Yeah.
game. And I was like, I feel like it's time to maybe update some of the games.
Yeah.
I
Well, we'll look
mean,
at curling. I know that's not a summer sport, but what the fuck is up with
I
curling?
know, I
Okay. Is
know.
that
And
even
then,
still on it?
oh yeah, curling is huge, especially in like the Great Lakes states and in Canada.
Oh God, well, that's one I don't
But
understand that one.
but listen to this. Because we were watching the Olympics, I somehow got roped into watching the Spain rugby team on TikTok. And I gotta tell you, if you want a sausage festival, you need to
Oh
look it up.
God.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. You can find it on Instagram Shorts,
Oh no,
on
thank you.
Facebook Stories. You can find it on TikTok. Just look it up, guys. Spain rugby team. Um, it's it's worth whatever time you waste sitting and watching it. Just saying. But anyway,
No.
um, I have some really exciting news for those of you who listen to us regularly. Not going to run down the list of 5 names because you all know who you are. By the way, I forgot to say Amy too. Amy's Amy's in that, and also Jen T. So we are now officially available on Apple Podcasts as well as iHeartRadio. So if you get your podcasts in these locations, you can now get Murder and Everything Else there too. And just so
And
you know, it was
woohoo!
no small feat. So you're welcome. And I retract all the stuff I said about Apple support because Caesar made the magic happen. And now we are live and hardwired and racking up listens as we speak. Cheryl,
Yay, Caesar.
Cheryl, it was a real labor of love, let me tell you. Do
Yeah,
you
sounds
have
like
do you have
an
any
update.
updates?
I do. I want to tell everyone I am still on hotspot. But I'm still using my hotspot. But what's hilarious is that outside my place, one day I noticed chalk lines on outside. And then the next day, the chalk lines were replaced with red and blue spray paint, like
Mm.
dashes and dots. And then I thought, this has got to be my internet company. And they're getting closer and closer to hooking me up. And then yesterday, there were little flags with their name on it, your favorite Cox. And um, so every day, you guys were getting closer to me actually having Wi Fi.
I
That's
thought you
my
were
update.
saying that the flags had cocks hanging on them.
That ever
Ooh,
happens, we'll upload
whole
a picture.
different that's a whole different podcast.
That's a whole different podcast. So that's my update, you guys. Just keep your fingers crossed that it happens soon.
Right? Well, rolling on to shout outs. Listen, I have a shout out to the state of South Carolina who hosted us this last week on some pretty beautiful beaches and provided some hot girl summer days so we could enjoy the sun and sand and sunburn our body. And I just want to say, if you have not been to South Carolina for some R&R, I highly recommend it. I suggest that you avoid Myrtle Beach because I'm pretty sure you can get herpes from just driving past it. But we
Oh,
stayed in a small area south of Myrtle Beach called Morell's Inlet. I don't know if it's Merle's Inlet or Morell's Inlet, but it was fabulous and just what we needed. And also, you should avoid anything with the name hibachi in it while you're in the South, and also anything that comes with free yum yum sauce. So,
oh,
anyway, Cheryl, do you
oh.
have any shout outs?
I have a shout out to humidity. Yes, humidity. Okay. You know when people go, well, it's hot and it's freaking like a friggin' oven, but at least it's dry heat. Let me tell you, I'm here to say that the last 3 days have been humid here in Arizona. We're
Oh,
known for dry heat because it's the desert. And I am loving the humidity because it's better for your skin, it's better for your hair. I just feel like moisture is
so
good.
true.
I mean, that's why
So
we're made
true.
up of how much water are our body's made up of? 90%, 80%. Dry is not good, you guys. I feel like a freaking lizard when it's dry. Everything's dry. Your hair is dry, your skin is dry, you feel like your soul is dry. And so don't ever thumbs down humidity, thumbs up to humidity. I'm telling you, it makes the world a better place. Yes, it feels sticky, but I'm telling you, it's better than being dry. I I am telling you, don't it, shout out to humidity. Also, I want to say, I know talk a lot of shit about Arizona, the way people drive and the heat, but there have been the people here have been so incredibly nice. I've said this before until they get behind the wheel of their car. But everyone's been so incredibly nice. What I love about, well, I'm in southern, I don't know if it's called southern, but it's called the Valley. Northern Arizona is much nicer because it's a lot cooler, but I'm in like, I wouldn't say southern because that's Tucson and all that, but in the Valley. Um, but people are very chill here in the sense that they don't, I feel like they're not judgy. Maybe they're judging me
Mm.
silently and I just, maybe they're really good at hiding it, but if people just don't, they just, I feel like they're just, they just do their own thing. They don't care what you're doing. I remember one time in California, I was in at the Cheesecake Factory in Marina Del Rey. If you guys know where that is, it's like near the water. It's a very like pricey area. And my friends and I were waiting in line to be seated. And this woman who was she was standing in front or in back of me, I don't know which, but I caught her looking me like literally head to toe and back up again. Has anyone ever looked at you like that? It is very like
Like
disturbing.
you're
And you don't know.
like you're a tasty morsel.
Oh no, no. I felt like she
Oh,
was like, what are you doing in this part of town? I don't know. That's how I felt. I
oh,
felt judged.
huh.
And I don't, you
I
never get that here. Or at least I
I
don't. I mean, I feel
I
like,
feel like women a lot of times look at other women up and down one, maybe because they are intrigued by what they're wearing, or maybe they like their outfit, or maybe they just don't realize and it's involuntary. I don't know.
yeah, who
I'm a
knows?
really, really good starer. The kids are always making fun of me and clowning me because I'm staring at people all the time. So who knows?
Well,
Maybe she thought, look at that hot mama. I wish I looked like her.
possibly. I don't know. But anyway, just back to my original shout out, which is to humidity. It really is, it's so much better for you. And I know we're not going to have it for very long, but it's been nice. It's been humid the last couple of days. So, yeah.
Well, we are heading into letters from our listeners. I have 0 letters this week. So that's a
Oh,
message
you guys, come
no message to
on.
you, Jen T. And so get those letters crack-a-lackin'. Also, in other news, one of my kids had a birthday, so I'm now the mother of only one teenager, guys. One
Oh,
teenager instead of two. I feel like I don't know what's happened. I can tell you exactly what it looked and felt like and smelled and sounded like when she shot out of my vagina, but I can tell you I don't know what happened, but the time really seems to have flown by. So,
right.
if you are a parent of and holding one of those little sausages and wondering if they're ever going to stop crying, I'm here to tell you that someday they will turn 20 and you'll just wonder what happened to the time. So,
Right.
so
Oh
that's
my
our
God.
letters from our listeners. And this week we are headed straight back to Murderville.
Yes, we are.
And so
Um,
Cheryl, take it away.
okay, I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and I'm glad I waited because there was an update from earlier this year.
Ooh, I love
So
when that happens.
right, and so do you guys know who the Blade Runner is? If you don't, I am here
The
to tell you
movie?
all about it. There is a movie called Blade Runner, but this is the real life person that was given
Hmm.
the moniker Blade Runner. So before I talk about him, my sources were Wikipedia, Genie.com, Biography.com, AllThat'sInteresting.com, ABC News, and CNN. We are here to talk about Oscar Leonard Carl Pistorius. He was born to Heinke and
Oh.
Sheila Pistorius on November 22nd, 1986, in Johannesburg. He has a brother named Carl and a sister named Amy. Oscar was born with legs, but without a fibula in both legs. That's the outer bone between the knee joint and ankle. His parents met with some of the world's top doctors to discuss Oscar's condition. Physicians said that he would be able to cope better if he was amputated before he learned to walk. The Pistorius family made the painful decision to follow through with that advice when Oscar was only 11 months old. South African orthopedic surgeon Jerry Versveld performed a life changing procedure, amputating both of Oscar's legs halfway between his knees and ankles. Within 6 months, Oscar was walking successfully with a pair of prosthetic legs. His handicap hardly slowed his involvement in sports, which spanned to include cricket, wrestling, and boxing. After a serious rugby injury in 2003, June of 2003, Oscar was introduced to running in January 2004 while undergoing rehabilitation, and he never looked back. Excuse me. His first racing blades were fitted by South African prosthetist Francois van der Watt. Because he was unable to find suitable running blades in Pretoria, van der Watt ordered the pair to be made by a local engineer. However, as these quickly broke, van der Watt referred Oscar to American prosthetist and Paralympic sprinter Brian Fraser to be fitted for
Is
blades by an Icelandic company.
isn't it
Yes.
pronounced prosthetist?
Is it?
I think it is.
Probably American prosthetist. Prosthetist.
Prosthetist.
Prosthetist.
Pro-
Prosthetist.
prosthetist.
Okay, thank you.
I'm
Because
not
the
sure.
American language is so complicated.
Hey, if there's any
Prosthetist.
prosthetist listening to this, could you reach out and let us know how to
You're
pronounce?
probably right. You're probably right. Remember, I just learned to read.
Oh my
These
God.
prosthetics are called flex foot cheetahs and would give Oscar the nickname Blade Runner. There was no stopping Oscar. He continued to win the hearts of fans and win races, capturing the gold in the T44 200-meter race at the 2004 Athens Paralympics, racing
Girl,
in at 20,
I watched him race in the Olympics.
yeah.
I in the Paralympics. Yeah. I was blown away. Like the type of prosthetics he was using was only something that we had seen in like movies with like robots
Mhm.
and stuff like
I
aliens.
know.
So it was so freaking cool.
That's cool because I didn't watch that. So I only know this like after the fact of him like being thrust into the media with this horrible. story. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really know him before, so that's kind of cool. So when you heard about this later, you must have been like, "Oh wow,
Oh, I
that's
was so blown away. I was like,
yeah."
how on earth? Like,
Did you go
usually
from
when you
that to
think of,
that?
yeah, when you think of an Olympian, you think of like an upstanding person in the community. You think of like a leader. You think of someone who could be a coach.
Oh, and he was the hero of Africa during
Oh,
this time.
yeah.
Like
He was a
Manny
golden
Pacquiao.
boy.
Oh yeah. Whoa. So he raced in at 21.97 seconds. It was a new world record at that time. In July of 2007, Oscar went head to head with able bodied athletes at the International Association of Athletics Federations, also known as IAAF, their Golden Gala event in Rome. Controversy arose in November 2007 after undergoing scientific tests, at the Cologne Sports University, known as CSU. Doctors claimed that Oscar's prosthetic limbs gave him an unfair advantage over his able-bodied competitors and that he was
Mhm.
able to run faster with less energy.
I remember
Oscar,
that.
you do? See, it's so
I
interesting
do.
because I did not follow any of this.
I
Um,
remember that because, I mean, if you watch the way he walked, there's if you watch these prosthetics, there's a bounce to them that you and I
right.
don't have when we walk on our regular legs and feet. But
Mhm.
but remember, he didn't grow up with his feet and legs past a certain point. So, it was really hard, I mean, I don't know. I mean, how is he gonna run without them, you know?
Right. So do you agree with them like you with this controversy that it would come up that they would question it?
I
Yeah,
Oh, I
right? I mean,
believe that the prosthetics gave him an advantage for sure, but he
oh,
also was an amazing athlete.
yeah. So he disputed the claim, saying the tests were biased and scientifically flawed. Despite his protests, the IAAF voted to ban him from any competitions involving able bodied athletes. Unhappy with the ruling, Oscar hired lawyers and underwent a second series of tests at Rice University in Houston. In May 2008, a court of arbitration panel unanimously sided with Oscar, saying both CSU and the IAAF didn't consider specific factors, such as the disadvantages he has at the beginning of each race, and that the tests only looked at what happens when Oscar runs in a straight line. Because there is you guys, there is a documentary on Netflix that I recently watched because I've always been very interested in his case in this case. I hadn't didn't follow him when he was going through his career, but after this happened, I was been following it. But they were talking about how he can't. So when they're rounding the corner of the track, he can't plant. He doesn't have a foot and ankle to plant around that curve the way a normal foot would. So I can kind of see that. So he was saying he kind of has to slow down a little. I mean, you can't see it to the
Mhm.
naked eye, but he doesn't have a natural foot plant, which makes sense. So and he's saying these tests, they're only testing him running in a straight line. The panel ruled there was no evidence the prosthetics gave Oscar an advantage, and the IAAF was forced to reverse its decision. So we could do a whole podcast on his triumphs and tribulations in his athletic career, but that would take up a whole hour and a half by itself. So I'm just going to go over some highlights, which was in 2008 he won 3 gold medals at the Paralympics in Beijing. Did you see that?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
it was
pretty cool.
crazy.
And then in 2012, 2012 hailed as a turning point for disabled athletes. Oscar becomes the first double amputee to compete at the Olympics, where he reaches the 400 meters semifinals in London. However, in the finals, he comes in last. But it was a huge. Did you watch this? Because it was huge
Oh,
that
yeah.
he came in like second in the semifinals, and he
Yeah.
was competing against able-bodied. He was the only disabled athlete. So
Yeah,
it
I
was pretty,
remember watching it. It was like it was groundbreaking.
yeah. So, I mean, it's so cool. It's such a sad story to see where he ended up, but
It was also very, very inspirational for any
hmm
Paralympian or anyone who lives with a disability because, you know, I mean, the Paralympics are pretty amazing. And just
yeah,
like the Olympics are pretty amazing. But for a Paralympian to compete in the Olympics and not and and compete next to people who are running on their two legs and feet,
mhm,
that's
yeah. In
so
fact,
amazing.
the guy who came in first when Oscar crossed the finish line for the finals, he removed his shirt and gave it to us. They exchanged shirts, and he gave Oscar a hug because it was a huge feat, right? It was and very inspiring. I am sorry, but the gardeners are coming around right now, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna have some lovely background noise. So the other person in this story, in this tragic story, is named Reva Steenkamp. She was born in Cape Town on August 19, 1983, to Barry and June Steenkamp before moving to Port Elizabeth. Barry Steenkamp's business was training horses, and his daughter grew up as an avid rider until a fall broke her back in her early 20s. After that, she had to learn to walk again. She became a law student. She became a law school graduate with an impressive catalog of modeling gigs under her belt. She had worked as a presenter for fashion TV in South Africa, posed as the cover girl for the South African edition of FHM, which is for Him magazine, and had been the face of Avon throughout the country. Sometime around November 2012, Reva
She was
Steenkamp and
drop dead gorgeous, by the way.
she was beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Her eyes, I think when they say bedroom eyes, which I don't know where that came from. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, you guys. So noisy. When they say bedroom eyes, she had bedroom eyes. She was beautiful. Um, and you know what's weird is in this documentary, they showed Oscar's mother because she died young. And well, Riva was blonde, and his mother had dark hair, but her eyes were almost exactly the same as Riva's. So that was kind
Hmm.
of eerie. But sometime around November of 2012, Riva Steenkamp met Oscar Pistorius. Oscar's on again, off again girlfriend at that time had decided not to go with him to an event. She had grown tired of their rocky relationship and could not bring herself to put on a facade at this event. So Oscar asked Riva to go with him to the event, and the two quickly formed a relationship. And from the outside, they seemed like a celebrity power couple. Unfortunately, their short lived romance came to a bloody end just 3 months later. In the early morning hours of February 14, 2013, Oscar Pistorius fired 4 shots through the bathroom door of his Pretoria home. At his trial, he would claim he believed a burglar had been hiding on the other side of the door. In actuality, there had been no burglar at all. Oscar had just shot and killed his girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp. Oscar was subsequently arrested and charged with murder before being released on bail. A year later, in March 2014, Pistorius' trial began in the High Court of South Africa. And here is how Oscar claims he came to kill his girlfriend in the pre dawn hours of Valentine's Day. So Oscar says that he and Riva went to bed about 10 p.m. Oscar arranged 2 fans in the doorway to the balcony because the air conditioning wasn't working. Oscar usually slept on the right hand side of the bed, but claims that due to a shoulder injury, he slept on the left hand side of the bed that night. His iPad and prosthetic legs were on the right hand side of the bed. Riva's bag
Hmm.
and sandals were on the left hand side, the side he claims he was sleeping on. Oscar woke up during the early hours because the room was hot and humid. Riva was also awake and asked him, "You can't sleep, Baba?" Oscar got up without his prosthetic legs on, and moved the fans from the balcony doorway to inside the room. He pulled the curtains tight to block a slim bit of light through the curtains, and moved Riva's jeans from the floor and was going to use them to cover a small LED light on an amplifier. So he had like sleep issues, like it has to be
Mhm.
dark and whatnot. Before covering the light, he heard the noise of a window opening in the bathroom. He said he believed the noise was from an intruder who was in the house, possibly via a ladder to a window. Still on his stumps, Oscar retrieved his gun from beneath the left side of the bed. He whispered to Riva to call the police and moved into a hallway leading to the bathroom. The gun was pointed in front of him. Moving down the hallway, he leaned against the wall for better stability on his stumps. His eyes kept moving between the bathroom and a nearby window. He yelled for the person to get out of his house and yelled to Riva to call the police. He felt vulnerable on his stumps and feared someone was about to come out of the bathroom when he heard the sound of wood moving and thought the door was opening. He says he was overcome with fear and he fired 4 shots in quick succession through the bathroom door. His ears were ringing from the gunshots, so he was unable to hear anything. He then retreated back down the hallway to the bed, still aiming his gun at the bathroom. He hopped on the bed in the dark. He felt for Riva and didn't find her. He thought maybe she was hiding on the floor or behind the curtains, so he checked the floor and ran his hands along the curtains. That was when he first suspected Riva may have been in the bathroom and when everything changed. Oscar went back to the bathroom, still holding the gun, and tried the doorknob. The door was locked. He went back to the bedroom, put on his legs, opened the curtains to the balcony while screaming for God to help him. With his legs on, he slammed into the bathroom door with his body. He got a cricket bat and smashed a hole in the door so that he could reach in, pick up a key from the floor, and let himself in. Oscar then found Riva crumpled on the floor with her head on the toilet. He sat over her and cried. He ran to the left side of his bed to retrieve his phone and went back to Riva. At 3:19 a.m., he called a neighbor. At 3:20 a.m., he phoned the ambulance service. And at 3:21 a.m., he called security at his estate. Oscar picked up Riva and took her downstairs near the front door. When a neighbor arrived, Oscar had his fingers in her mouth trying to keep her airway open and a hand on her hip to staunch the bleeding. Police and paramedics arrived. Oscar was asked to stay in the kitchen. A paramedic told Oscar that Riva was dead. Oscar asked the police if he could wash his bloody hands because the smell was making him ill. And about 2 hours later, Oscar asked the police to take whatever photos of him that were needed so he could take off his blood-soaked clothing. So this is Oscar's account. The
Hmm.
prosecution, however, said Oscar deliberately shot Riva dead after the couple had had an argument on Valentine's Day. Ballistics expert Captain Christian Mangena told the court he believed Riva was standing up in the toilet cubicle facing the closed door when she was hit in the right hip. Riva,
Excuse me.
bless you. Riva then fell back onto a magazine rack next to the toilet before 3 more bullets were fired at the door. One bullet missed her and ricocheted off the wall twice. Captain Mangena said fragments from this bullet caused bruising on Riva's back. The expert said Riva was then hit by 2 more shots, one in the arm and the other went through her left hand into her skull as she crossed her arms over her head to protect herself. Captain Mangena said that after being hit in the head, she fell down and her head ended up on the toilet seat. He said the gun had been fired from at least 23 inches. He added that Oscar was most likely not wearing his prosthetics legs at the time. Captain Mangano said he believed there was a gap between the first and second bullet being fired, which contradicts Oscar's version of events. It corroborates evidence given by a neighbor who said she heard a shot, then a pause, then 3 further shots. It also suggests that Riva may have had time to scream before she fell to the floor, supporting the neighbor's testimony that she had heard a woman screaming. But the defense disputes her testimony, saying the only scream came from Oscar after he had fired. Remember, he says he opened the curtains and was asking for
Yeah.
God, screaming for
I I,
God to
I
help
want to
him.
just want to stop you here really quickly because you said that um at his trial he would claim he believed a burglar had been hiding on the other side of the door.
Hmm.
So my question to you is, at which point, like, has he lied yet? Or like, because he, like, obviously when they showed up to get her body, you know what I mean? Like, is that the story he was telling from the time the cops or the ambulance got there? Someone broke into my house and shot my
That he
girlfriend?
thought. Oh, no, 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 no. His story, and it has never changed. he stands by this, is that he thought there was an intruder in the bathroom. And that's his
Oh,
story. That's his story. And that it was an accident that he shot, that
interesting.
it was her. But yeah, I have
Interesting.
some points that I want to go over with you, just food for thought type of thoughts. Anyway,
Yeah.
throughout the trial, throughout the trial, other pieces of evidence were presented that showed insight into Oscar's true nature. One text from Riva to Oscar sent about 2 weeks before her murder read, "I'm scared of you sometimes and how you snap at me and of how you will react to me." The Guardian later reported that a former girlfriend of Oscar's had come forward and accused him of emotional and physical abuse. She said he would lock her in the house for hours without any food, call her parents throughout the day to track her movements, and threaten and physically abuse her to the point that she feared for her life. The
Oh God.
prosecution tried to paint a picture of a violent, gun obsessed man given to explosive fits of rage and was trigger happy. Oscar was also charged in connection with two other alleged incidents of guns going off in his hands, unrelated to the killing of Riva. So during this trial, he was charged with her killing as well as these two incidents. So the first incident, Oscar's friend, a professional boxer named Kevin Larina, said Oscar was passionate about his gun collection. Kevin testified he met a group of friends, including Oscar, in a packed restaurant when Oscar accidentally fired a pistol under the table. Kevin said he was shocked. He said, "The bullet never hit my foot, thank God, but the shrapnel caught me and I was a bit cut." Kevin said Oscar asked him to take the blame for the incident. So in the second incident, Oscar's friend Darren Fresco said a furious Oscar fired a gun from a car sunroof after a police officer handled his weapon during a traffic stop. Fresco was driving the car in late 2012 when police pulled him over for speeding. The officer had picked up Oscar's weapon, to which Oscar said, "You can't just touch another man's gun," Darren testified. He was furious.
I'm pretty sure the saying is you just can't touch another man's junk.
Well, in this case, the junk was replaced with gun. So Darren says Oscar was furious about it that someone else had touched his gun, and Oscar later that day fired through the sunroof out of the blue, no warning. He said. So there are no jury trials in South Africa. Oscar's fate was
What the
decided by a
hell?
judge. It was decided by a judge and assisted by two assessors. And so I have mentioned this before. I don't remember what episode, but I watched this trial. It's on YouTube. If you guys want to just take a peek, I know no one's obsessed as I am and watch hours and hours of a trial, but it's so interesting. I think it was when I was talking about hearsay and how we are so in this in our American judicial system. During a trial, you have to play. There's so many rules, which I understand, but during this trial, they are almost conversational in their questions and more interestingly in the responses. So Oscar's responses are just they're conversational.
Hmm.
They can talk. It's not like here where the witness gets one sentence off and into the second sentence there's an objection and then there's some
Right.
legal standing that they can't talk about this, that, or the other. The prosecutor is just reaming him. It's like, oh, he starts off. So in this documentary, the defense attorney says, "I knew that the prosecutor was going to start off with something dramatic because this prosecutor is known to do that." So
Right.
in this trial, he shows a video of a watermelon being shot, with a rifle or I don't know what kind of gun. And the watermelon explodes and it's red inside. You know what I mean? So he asks Oscar, "Do you ever remember um, say using the phrase zombie killer when referring to a gun or your gun?" And Oscar goes, "No." And then it's interesting because the judge was female And so whenever he's asked a question by the prosecutor, he starts with, my lady. And so it's kind of weird because it's a male prosecutor asking him, but he responds to the judge. So the prosecutor says, do you remember referring to your gun as a zombie killer? And
Hmm.
he says, no, my lady, I don't remember that. And the prosecutor's like, are you sure you have never used that term? And he's like, my lady, I am just saying that I don't remember saying that. And so the prosecutor plays a clip of Oscar shooting his gun and saying, and referring to it as a zombie killer. It's right there. And then
Hmm.
the prosecutor compares Riva's skull. He shows the video again of the watermelon being exploded, and he says that, and then he shows a picture of Riva, which they don't show, thankfully, on YouTube. But then they show a picture for the jury, who, not the jury, whoever was in the courtroom, a picture of her skull. And Oscar breaks down and he's like, and the prosecutor is like, look at this picture. Why don't you look at this picture? You did this. Why can't you look at it now? I mean, you could not do that in the American courts. They would be
Right,
like,
right.
objection, Your Honor, badgering the witness. No, this goes
Yeah.
on. And Oscar's like, my lady, I was there. I don't need to see this picture. I mean, it's better than, like, I'm telling you, it's better than the television. So my point is that it's almost like a movie where you're like, oh, you could never be able to say that. And it's conversational. It's very interesting. But anyway, so his fate was decided by a judge and assisted by two assessors. And on September 12th, 2014, the judge found Oscar not guilty of murder, but guilty of culpable homicide, the culpable homicide of Riva, which is in the
Hmm.
US is manslaughter, and guilty of
Uh,
reckless endangerment with a firearm in the restaurant incident, but he was found not guilty of the charges related to discharging a firearms through the sunroof of a car and illegal possession of ammunition. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The ruling was appealed by prosecutors who claimed the sentence was too lenient. Oscar's sentence was increased to 13 years and 5 months by South Africa's Supreme Court of Appeal in 2017, which I think is, regardless of whether you think it's too lenient or not, uh, and I'm sure I can find a case that happened in the US where this happened, but it seems kind of like, wow, it, he was sentenced and it's like, that's not enough. And they were able to increase it, which if I were him, I'd be like, man, I already had a ruling. You know what I mean? But it's kind of
right.
like Amanda Knox too, though. He was like, you're guilty, you're not guilty. I guess in her case, it's good. It worked in her favor. But so getting back to January of this year, Oscar was released from prison on parole on Friday, January 5th, 2024. A parole board granted Oscar's petition in November on the grounds that he had served half of his 13-year sentence for murdering Riva, making him eligible according to South African law. Oscar will complete the remainder of his sentence in the country's community correction system. He will have to attend programs on gender-based violence and continue therapy sessions on anger management. Oscar is required to be at home at particular hours of the day. He will not be allowed to consume alcohol or prohibited substances and will be required to participate in programs identified by the Correctional Supervision and Parole Board. He is restricted from conducting media interviews. We
That's why we haven't seen him in the
That's
news.
why we haven't
I
seen
was
him.
wondering why he hasn't been popping up because one of the things was that he seemed to be very, um, like from the Olympic wins, and then with this case, he seemed very comfortable going on the news. And so since he's gotten out, I haven't seen anything from him.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't know he was paroled. Um,
Yeah.
Earlier this year. And so I think it was me watching that Netflix doc uh that brought this on. But yeah. Yeah, you're
Well,
right.
I'm sure that there's some wing nuts out there who have been writing to him in prison and we're waiting for him to get out because I mean, I don't even know how this happens or why, or I'm not really interested in the psychology behind it. But whenever somebody's in prison, I feel like there's a lineup of like, I'm sorry, weirdos, for lack of a better term, that are dying to marry them and have
Oh,
children
yeah.
with them. I mean, look at this dude who, married Gypsy Rose Blanchard while she was incarcerated. And then she's
Oh, yeah.
out and she's with him for like a hot minute and she realizes he drives her bonkers. Which, oh, nobody saw that coming. Like, you basically spent 11 years in prison. What makes you think you guys are a match made in heaven? So I'm
Right.
sure
I
he's
know.
not gonna have any problem finding some like crazy person who's gonna be like, but he's so hot. Anyway,
Yeah,
go on.
he is. I'm sorry, but he is cute. Um, so Reva Steenkamp's mother has been vocal in her criticism of his release. In a victim impact statement in November, she said that while she has forgiven Oscar, she did not believe his version of events. At this time, I am not convinced that Oscar has been rehabilitated, she said. Rehabilitation requires someone to engage honestly with the full truth of his crime and the consequences thereof. Nobody can claim to have remorse if they are not able to engage fully with the truth. If someone
That
does not,
is such a I'm sorry, but that is so profound.
yes,
Nobody can claim to have remorse if they are not able to engage fully with the truth. I
I
mean,
know
I
it's
wish
so true.
I wish that, like, I don't know, like when you go someplace and they have inspirational quotes on the wall. I feel like,
Hmm.
that should be the inspirational quote over every doorway going in
Right,
and out. Like, I don't know, prison, your parole officer, I don't know, the visitation room, whatever.
right. No, I know. Gives you chills. If someone does not show remorse, they cannot be considered rehabilitated. If they are not rehabilitated, their risk of recidivism is high. She also raised concerns for the safety of other women once he was released on parole.
Mhm.
June Steenkamp described February 14, 2013 as the day life changed forever. Now, almost 11 years later, the pain is still raw and real, and my dear late husband Barry and I have never been able to come to terms with Reva's death or the way she died. So I just want to say that the National Domestic Violence Hotline, also known as NDVH, is a 24-hour confidential service for survivors, victims, and those affected by domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and relationship abuse. Advocates are available at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 7233, and through online chatting at www.hotline.org. All calls are free and confidential, and the NDVH was created through the Violence Against Women Act. So please reach out if you need help. So, what do you think? Do you think so?
Well,
His,
we
like I said, his story has always been that he thought so. In this documentary, they show how he grew up in a country that was had a lot of,
apartheid.
yeah, so he was raised with this fear and violence around him, and he's famous and he has a lot of money, so
Yeah.
he says, he was very paranoid about someone
Yeah.
breaking into his home, and that's what he thinks, so he's
I
always stood
do
by that.
I do believe that. I will tell you that I talked a little bit about it last week on the podcast, but when I was a kid, we lived in Kingston, Jamaica, and it was a
Okay.
crime-ridden city. And because my mom and my grandmother were both white women, there was this assumption that we had a lot of money um, and a lot of valuables, and people tried to break into our home all the time. Now, I don't know if they were breaking in because they thought we had a lot of money and a lot of valuables, or because they saw that my mom and my grandmother were both white women. I don't know. All I know is that as a child, from the time I was 10 until the time I was 14, we had attempted or successful break-ins at least 12 to 15.
Oh my
Those are the
god.
ones, yeah, those are the ones I can think of. I'm sure that there were others that I wasn't aware of because I was sleeping or because I was gone to school or because I was busy and
Right.
not, but I remember each time being filled with
Oh,
terror and
of
always
course.
worrying about our house being broken into. And we had um, metal metal bars on all the windows and all the doors, and people still got into our house. They would grease up with soap and slide under the bars. So I can tell you that it gave you this, like, we had no sense of security because the other thing was the two people who were in charge of us, my mother and my grandmother, they couldn't do anything to protect us. So it
Right.
was this feeling that there was no protection. If you wanted to
Oh,
come in, we would come home from church and our house would have been ransacked and they would have
oh.
found nothing. And we'd have to put everything back in the drawers and everything away. And they would find nothing. We had no television, we had no stereo system, we had nothing. I think we had like an 8-track player.
But the
Nobody wants
but
an 8-track player.
yeah, but the thought that you could have been harmed. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's
Never mind your
so
stuff.
so
Your stuff.
the paranoia of always feeling like someone was going to break in and take your shit, that is a palpable feeling. I can tell you that moving creates a lot of these feelings for me of like personal safety. So I agree
Mhm,
with him on that. He also grew up very privileged and wealthy in a country where there was a huge disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And
mhm,
so I think that he grew up with this kind of, obviously vigilante style, you know, um, belief where I'm going to buy a gun to protect my stuff, and whoever tries to get it, I'm going to shoot them. I can tell you, we didn't have a single gun in the house in Jamaica. And if we had, we probably would have accidentally shot each other because we didn't know how to
That's
use it,
that's what I'm
and
so afraid of,
so
having a
that's what
firearm.
ended up happening was he, even if he thought it was an intruder, he still shot the person that he loves more than one time because he thought they weren't you know what I mean? So whether he intended to shoot her or he didn't intend to shoot her, he's guilty of having killed her.
Exactly. You make a great point because in the documentary, someone says that. Someone, I don't remember who, but they said that in the end, he murdered someone.
Mhm.
Regardless of what the intent, where it started, what was in his mind, the bottom line is he killed someone. So you are absolutely in line with that statement. And I thought that was just very right. I mean, it's very accurate, right? Um,
Yep.
but so when I
If
was
he had
watching the
had
trial,
if he had had if he'd had um you know uh a hammer or a stick or a baseball bat, all he would have done was hit the door. I mean,
right?
he had something, that would kill someone and kill them, really effectively. And he didn't just shoot once. That's the other thing is people always say things like, well, I took classes and I would just shoot them in the arm or the leg and disable them. I'm like, no, you don't. I mean, come on. Even if he was scared because he thought it was an intruder or he was trying to kill his girlfriend, boy, he sure certainly discharged that gun more than once. He didn't just
Right.
shoot to like disable their leg or their arm. And how would you even know if you were shooting through a closed door?
Exactly. So when I watched the trial, and because he's speaking in his, like I said, it's very like a narrative, right?
In
He's very
Afrikaans?
conversational. No, he was
Were they
no,
speaking in Afrikaans or were they speaking in
no,
English?
English. Yeah, English with
Oh,
very heavy
interesting.
accents. Um,
I love, love, love the South African accent. I
Me
find it
too.
so, so enjoyable to listen to out of all the accents. It's like, it's so distinctive. It's not anything like an English accent or an Australian accent or New Zealand accent. They're very
I
short on the vowels. They kind of like cut the vowels really short.
I completely agree, Joy. You guys gotta watch the trial. You have to just check into YouTube and watch just a little bit, because it made the prosecutor, his questions were so, like, his cross-examination was so dramatic with that accent. Oh my God. Like, I was scared. I was like, oh my God, if this guy was questioning me, I admit to everything, even stuff I didn't do. Um, so when I watched the trial and Oscar speaking in his own voice and being able to just give a complete, just talk, I'm telling you, it's conversational. It's not like the American trials. I believed him. I was like, I believe you could be that paranoid. Um, and it's just one of those things that just snowballs, the events of that night. But when I watched the
Mhm.
documentary, and I did even before watching the documentary, I had questions like, so put yourself in that situation. He says that he's yelling to Reva to call the police. Now, maybe you're on such high alert. Now, I'm still trying to go with his version of events. You're so on high alert that it doesn't ring any bells to you that she's not responding. You're yelling, right? Your partner is supposedly in bed, and you think your partner's in bed, and you're yelling at them to call the police, and she didn't answer. Now, wouldn't that make you stop and go, maybe she's the one in the bathroom?
I
Um,
don't know. I mean, the gun is so loud. I've heard I've heard
well, he
kids
did say it was his
and
ears were ringing. He did
yeah,
say
I've heard adults say that their ears ring for quite some time, and he didn't just discharge the weapon once, he discharged it multiple times. So you can't hear anything. You're screaming, Reva, Reva, go call the police. And you're like, bang, bang,
oh my
bang, bang,
God,
bang, bang. And
Joy, that
how,
was really good.
how are you? How are you going to hear that she's going, hey, you've killed me, I'm dying. Call an
Joy.
ambulance. I mean, seriously.
Okay, that one was not so good, but your the other one was so good. No, listen. So first he says he whispers to her when he's getting out of the bed. Now he's sleeping on the left-hand side of the bed. She's on the right. He has to cross her to get to the bathroom. Okay, that's the bathroom's on that side of on
Now,
the
where
right side
was
of the
the
bed.
gun? Does he sleep with it like strapped to his leg?
He said in his version of events that he got it right from his side of the bed. I don't know if it was it. Did I say under the bed? Anyway, regardless,
God.
he's crossing the bed with the gun. This is hit what he says, and I'm questioning it because he whispers to her because he thinks this is his event version that there's someone in the bathroom, and he crosses the bed to go towards the bathroom area, and he whispers to her, Reva, call the police. Now he is whispering, so maybe she don't wake up. I don't know. To me, it's like it just. What I'm trying to say is, with all the evidence um, and testimony of how trigger happy he was, how he was abusive in his relationships, I tend
Right.
to lean to him intentionally shooting her, maybe not meaning to kill her. Although, if you're firing 4 times to a closed door, chances are the outcome is not going to be good. But I think,
Also, the other thing
and
I
they had,
think about, the other thing I just want to stop and say is he's tried the door, obviously. I mean, the door is locked.
and
So
that's the other thing. Why would she
my
have locked the
question,
door?
yeah, my question to you is this. Um, if there's an intruder in your bathroom, you could open the door and still shoot them. Why would you shoot through a door? And
Yeah.
because now you got to replace the door and all the tiles and shit that you, no, seriously, like that you've, like in the bathroom. But the other thing is, did she have her cell phone on her? What was she doing in the bathroom with the door locked? Was she on the phone? Was she trying to climb out the window? I mean, I don't know about you, but our bathrooms have locks on them, and
You don't
sometimes
lock it.
I don't,
You
but
don't
my
lock it.
kids do. They act like it's freaking
Oh.
Fort Knox up in here, and I'm like, first of all, what What's going to happen? Am I going to walk into the bathroom and be like, gotcha? Or surprise? It's like you're going to the freaking bathroom. Nobody is going to bother you. But the other thing is sometimes the bathroom door, I'll go to the bathroom and somebody will just walk in on me and I'm like,
Well,
and
yeah,
every time that happens, one of my kids will go, "Why don't you lock the door?" So you know what I do? I just leave the door open. There's really no point in closing it because they're gonna walk in on me anyway, and it's just wasted motion. I'm like, listen, if you see the light on and you hear the sound of liquid running, I'm most likely going to the bathroom.
I was not expecting that.
And
You
then
are so funny.
they'll literally yell across the house, "Close the door." And I'm like, "Why?
Oh
It's
God.
my house. I pay the mortgage. I can shit with the door open if I want to."
Oh my God. Oh, jeez, you're hilarious. Yeah, so that's why I mean I tend to believe the prosecution. I think they had a fight. There is testimony that people heard them fighting. Just his
Yeah.
history, I believe they were fighting. She got scared. There's more evidence. I just touched briefly on one of the texts that she had sent him, but there was evidence, and there were friends of hers that said that she was afraid of his temper. So I believe this is my belief that they had fought, and she was afraid that it was escalating to where it escalated, and she ran into the bathroom for protection, probably not thinking he was going to actually shoot through the bathroom door. And I think it was a
Right.
horrible escalation of events. What do you think?
Well, I'd be interested now, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I want to go watch snippets of this trial because one, I love the South African accent,
That was
and
good.
and also um I'd be interested to see if either of them had been drinking or one of them had been drinking because a lot of times that will make, tempers run hotter and, previous incidents of maybe like domestic violence or anger or, like, just fights that they would have had. I mean, they only were together for 3 months.
3 months. Oh my God. 3 months.
All right.
That's what
I just
happened.
need to
Yeah.
say one more time. We've said this before, and this applies to people of any age out there. I get so tired of hearing people say, but I love him or I love her. So I'm staying. Love is not supposed to hurt, folks. If it
Yeah.
hurts, if you're spending a lot of time crying, if you have
Are hiding in the
visions,
bathroom.
you're hiding in the bathroom, if you have visions of smothering this person with a pillow, if you're trying to hide messages or your phone or you're hiding from them or you're pretending you were someplace you weren't so they didn't know what you were doing, that's not called love. That's
Mhm.
crazy. Walk away. Call those numbers that we mentioned before. It's not supposed to be it does, volatility does not mean that this is something that was meant to be. It just
Yeah.
means that someone's got anger problems, somebody is controlling, somebody doesn't know how
Yep.
to check themselves. Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe after they've done some work on themselves, you can maybe go out for a coffee and be friends. But generally speaking, that's not the partner for the rest of your life.
No, Joy is making an excellent point. So this year, in June was the 30th anniversary of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman's murder. And there have been a lot of specials on it and whatnot. But anyway, and I have heard this before. So her best male friend, um, they were rooming together. There's also a special on him. Anyway, he when they were young and they first met, they were good friends, and he invited her to live with him in his studio apartment. He slept on the floor, she slept on the couch. And she comes home one day and she says she met OJ at the restaurant because she was working at the restaurant. And he's like, oh, well, that's cool. He was impressed at first because OJ was this big football star. And then she says, yeah, we're going to go out. Well, the first date, if you want to call it that, he says, I want you home. This was a friend, but he was very protective over her. And he wanted her home by 11 or 12, whatever it was. She came home at like 2. And he's like, where were you? I was really worried about you. And then he notices that her jeans are ripped. The top button of her jean is ripped. And he goes, what happened? And she goes, oh, I don't remember exactly how she passed it off, but she was like, but I really like him. And so her friend like kicks himself to this day for not stepping in. And I'm thinking, you know what? You wouldn't have been able to step in. She was on her way on this crazy journey with this guy. But I guess the point I'm trying to get to is, ladies and gentlemen, it's not passion. I think people confuse passion with violence. You know what I mean? If somebody's ripping your jeans on the first date, not that it would be okay on the third date, but if they're ripping your jeans off, trying to rip your jeans off, that's not passion. Anyway, Joy is absolutely right. Violence is not love.
Exactly. This was really, really interesting, Cheryl. I didn't know half of this, but I did know who he was. I watched him in the Olympics. I can't even believe that I just talked about the Olympics just randomly. I didn't realize you were doing an episode on an Olympian. Anyway, what an awful, awful, awful crime. And of course, the only 2 people who know what really happened that night, only one of them is here. The other one's no longer here. And that's
Right.
the other thing is, no matter what his story is, there's also another side to the story. Exactly. And that person's not here. So, what an amazing, what a horrible, not amazing, but horrible, horrible crime. But you know what else is a crime?
What's that, Joy?
That we are out of time.
That is a crime. Thank you for listening, everyone. And remember, don't complicate your day. All creativity, commentary, and opinions in this podcast belong to Cheryl and Joy. Music composed and mixed by Gabe McKeon. Logo and merch managed by Cheryl Callan. Podcast editing, advertising, and social media managed by Joy McKeon. Legal representation provided by John Boljezic. Please like, subscribe, follow, and listen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Audible.com, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. And remember, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok, or you can email us at murderandeverythingelse@gmail.com.
Bye, fishes.